Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 97 of the North Meets South web podcast.
Chicka chicka Janet. Hey, dude. So you're going to be like, seriously? Did you not check that? Did you not check that, Jake? And I'm a little bit curious right now if I'm recording using the correct audio input. Is it worth stopping my recording and making sure that I'm using the right one?
I'm hearing you over Skype using the correct one, but please do check that you are.
Things that make you say,
Hmm.
Let me just look real quick. I wonder if I just do like new. All right. Here we go. I'm going to stop it and restart it. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, stopping. All right. I'm going to save this one.
For those of you watching live, we are obviously a high quality, well experienced podcast duo, and we have been doing this for almost 100 episodes on this show and over 100 episodes of the Laravel News podcast. So we definitely know what we're
And it
doing.
was recording the correct input. It was, but hey, it's like one of those things where I'd rather check it up front than
For sure.
to get to the end and be like, oh no,
Yeah.
I didn't check and it was actually recording my AirPods. We've
Yeah.
had that happen before,
We
haven't
have.
we?
And then I have to like rip the audio from the YouTube
Yep.
stream and then try and
Yep.
make sure we don't end up sounding like we're echoing because the audio doesn't always quite line up when we fix it.
True story. It has happened. It has happened before.
Yeah.
So those of you who are watching live, Michael was like, "What? Happy birthday sign behind you still again? This is the wall that the happy birthday banner always gets put on when it is someone's birthday." Michael was like, "It's somebody's birthday. You forgot to take it down."
Yeah.
My little dude Harrison is turning 4 in a couple days. Let's see.
Thursday.
Yeah, he's turning 4. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Thursday. And we're going to be in Florida. So we had his little birthday party with all his friends early. So his birthday banner's up, and it was all a good time. Our pool, it was freezing today.
Oh.
It was supposed to be a pool party, and it was freezing today. Like 65. Let me see here. Units, 65F.
About what, 20?
To
15?
C. Yeah, it's 18 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, that's probably a bit cool for the pool. The photo you sent does look sensational though.
Yeah, oh man, for sure. So what I did is I cranked the pool up to, let me see what it would be your degrees. It would be 29 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, that's nice. It's good.
So so it was quite comfortable, and
until you get out.
Yeah,
like,
it's
holy mother of God.
Exactly. Like all the kids' lips were turning purple when they were getting out. They're so cold, like in the cold air because the wind was whipping around. But it was worth it. Yeah, I just had to turn the heater on all day. So anyway, it was a good time. A fun time was had by all, and I smoked a pork shoulder, 2 pork shoulders today.
Beautiful.
So yeah, that was fun. You've been breaking out the grill quite a bit these days, huh? Did you like my comment on your post the other day?
You have
Did
to
you see it? You
me.
had that picture, that beautiful T-bone steak that you made the other day, and I said kangaroo never tasted so good.
Yeah, kangaroo.
And
Skippy.
Did you see that one?
I did see that. I remember now. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little bit of activity on that one. A couple people like that one.
Yeah, I don't think I've never seen a kangaroo steak with a bone in it. Usually, it's a fillet or something off the bone. I've seen, kangaroo mince and kangaroo sausages and kangaroo steaks, but I've never seen it on the bone. I don't really you don't really get
pretty uncommon.
It's because it's such a lean it's such a lean meat. You don't really have like kangaroo ribs and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you bought a whole slab of skip, you could, but I've never.
Slab of skip.
A whole slab.
Is that what you call it? Is that the name of the kangaroo? Is skip?
Well, we used to have a TV show in like the late 80s, early 90s called Skippy the bush kangaroo.
Okay.
And so we refer to kangaroo as skip. And so when you have spaghetti bolognese, you have spag bog, skip. And when you have kangaroo bolognese, you have skip bog.
Okay, is that common? Do people eat kangaroo on a semi-regular basis?
Not really.
Or not too much?
It's because it's more of a gamey meat. I don't think people, especially if people don't enjoy, because you can't cook it like you would a steak, like a beef steak. You wouldn't cook it. It has to be no more than medium rare. And if you don't like your meat quite rare, then you probably wouldn't eat it. It's definitely an acquired taste, but
Sure, that makes sense.
It's very lean. It's very high in protein, so it's good, but it's also more expensive as well. So,
last question about killing kangaroos for our sensitive listeners. Sorry, everybody. Do people ever go like hunting for kangaroo? Is that a thing?
yeah, there is.
Like the easiest thing for me to compare is like, we go deer hunting here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the only thing I can think about that's like you would see out in the wild, like in the woods, that you would actually go shoot and then eat it. Maybe like, rabbit or squirrel, maybe. Like, I guess sometimes people would do that. But typically, like, if I know somebody who's like going to eat like a gamey sort of meat or something, it's probably going to be something like deer and venison.
Yeah.
So that's the best thing I can compare it to. Do people ever do that?
Yeah,
Go hunt kangaroo, hunt skip?
It's mostly, professional hunting. Some states do allow recreational hunting and things like that. You got to get permits and things like that. But it's traditionally professionals, as far as I'm aware. Like it's more for culling.
You'd have to be professional to be killing kangaroos with boomerangs.
Yeah,
that's the crazy part, right? Because that you can only hunt with
Yeah,
boomerangs in Australia.
That's right. Traditionally you're only allowed to use boomerangs or throwing spears
Yep.
for kangaroos. So it's
have to honor the tradition.
You have to be very very skilled to hit a moving kangaroo at 100 meters with a spear.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Okay, well, folks, we can move on from the whole poor little Skip. Poor Skip the kangaroo.
To our vegetarian and or vegan listeners.
Yeah, we'll have to put a trigger warning at the beginning of the show. This podcast may contain discussion that may not be suitable for all listeners.
That's right. Just skip the first.
Listener discretion.
Skip the first 7 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think most of our regular listeners probably do. They just skip, and then okay, here we go. We're actually into the meat of the discussion. Speaking of, so
keep talking about meat.
Hey, yeah, it's true. No, we're good. Hey, I was gonna talk about we actually were going to have a special guest on tonight, and for a reason which I don't know if I'd want to share. Just, whatever. It's his news to share if he cares to. Something came up. He was not able to make it, which is a huge bummer. But we were going to have Yaz on to talk about. He actually, I suppose we can share his news because he's already shared it on Twitter. But Yaz is going freelance. So he shared the other day. He said, "I'm officially unemployed," and said thanks to his previous employer, Arreo. Which is pretty cool stuff they're doing there. But wanted to talk to him a little bit about his personal journey through a couple of different jobs and then kind of going out to freelance on his own and sort of the things that led to his decision and what the future looks like for him. So we're really looking forward to having him on, but not tonight. It's not going to work. So with that in mind, though, I was interested in hearing about some of the stuff you guys had been discussing in our channel. I had created a new channel for us on Telegram, and then you guys proceeded to discuss all of your Vim stuff in that channel. And then later we're like, wait a second. This is the channel named Yaz is going freelance. Oops.
Yeah, I thought I was having a one-on-one discussion with Yaz because he'd been asking me about Vim and what my setup was like and how it works with JavaScript and whether it's good to use with Laravel and PHP in general and things like that. And so I'd been going through every now and then, probably every 3, 4, 5 months, I'll go through. And there's always little things that you pick up along the way that kind of just start to bug you. And with Vim, because it's programmable and extensible and all that kind of stuff, you kind of go in and you set some time aside and you start to dig in to fix things up. And so I pared down a lot of things. And over time, all of our tooling gets better, whether we're using VS Code or Sublime or Phpstorm or Vim, the tooling always gets better. And so often there's better ways of doing things and things work better. And if you don't remember to update your plugins and things like that periodically, you might be missing out on some new features and things along those lines. So I had gone through recently and I just shared a screenshot in the Vim support group on Discord that I'm a part of, which I can link to in the show notes. We had a whole bunch of people join yesterday actually because Jesse Leet tweeted an Australian translation of what pebcac is. So and a whole bunch of people came
That's
in
hilarious.
and joined that. So, yeah, I went through it, and there's like, was it 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 plugins that I'd removed from Vim because they're available in sort of less bespoke configurations now. So it used to be that I had a plugin for Git Gutter and a plugin for PHP CS Fixer and a plugin for Prettier and a plugin for snippets and a plugin for Tailwind and things like that. And now lots of these things are available via, I suppose, what is the most common of the PHP, certainly the most extensive support for PHP. There's two main ones. There's one called Conqueror of Completion, and there's another one called PHP Actor. And PHP Actor was really good. It kind of read PSR4 and did all of your imports, and it gave you some intelligence around definitions. Like if you see a method in a file, you could click through, or you could go through to the where that's defined and get the method signature and things like that. And so then PHP Actor does that by reading the files and introspecting and things like that, whereas Conqueror of Completion hooks into the language server protocol. So the basically the thing that powers VS Codes in IntelliSense and things like that. So you can install Conqueror of Completion and provide a language server, and then because IntelliFence, which is the thing that powers the tooling in VS Code, is a language server protocol compatible implementation, you could install IntelliFence, point Conqueror of Completion at that, and get basically feature parity with VS Code in terms of PHP completion and importing and refactoring and doc blocks and all of that kind of stuff. So stripping all of this functionality, and now we've got global extensions available as part of Conqueror of Completion. And that means that you get all of this functionality built into one place. So you can just say, I want these extensions, in a similar way that in VS Code you'd say, I want these plugins, or in Phpstorm that you'd say, I want all of these plugins.
Yeah, sure.
And it all just kind of scaffolds itself out. So if I add a new one to the list, I reread my configuration, and then it will just install those plugins, and off you go. So it's definitely...
And now that's, just to be clear, so that's what's powering that. Is it just a vimrc sort of thing? That's where you're talking about with your configuration file. You
Correct.
just add a new plugin to vimrc, and then you reload Vim, and then it just installs it and puts it in there, or you install the plugin via Brew or something like that, or does Vim have its own package manager, or how does it typically work?
Vim,
so
Vim.
Just to
sorry, go on.
No. And just to provide some, like, maybe some context around the situation a little bit. So we had the discussion with, you had the discussion with Yaz in that channel, and you and I of course have discussed like Phpstorm, Vim, whatever. And what you basically posted on Twitter the other day was you're going to have to start writing and or sharing about some videos about Vim, #dispel the myth, right? And so I thought this was rather insightful. Was you posted on the 25th, which was, so you wanted to change from, so my aim isn't to convince you to change from what works for you now, but instead to show that Vim can be just as powerful as your favorite editor or IDE with less tinkering than you think. Because that's the thing, right? Everybody's like, well, of course it can be. It's infinitely configurable, right?
Yeah, correct.
But how much work is it actually? That's the myth you're trying to dispel, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it actually that much work, or is it you just don't know really how it works? So that's sort of what you're trying to explain in the context of the discussion we're having right now. And that's what I'm trying to understand too, is how is it that you get it set up, and why is it actually easier than what I think? So So you're talking about using your vimrc file, which is the file where you store your configuration for how Vim runs on your machine. And so so that's why I'm asking some of these questions, like, does Vim have a package manager? Does it, how do you go about installing some of these things? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So as of Vim 8, so the current version of Vim, it has its own plugin manager now called Vim Plug. And that's is it Vim Plug? Oh gosh. Hang on a second.
Uh-oh.
Let me just double check.
I gotta see what version of Vim I have installed.
Let me double check this, because
No worries.
I was using, there was Vundle and there was Pathogen, and there are all these different things before. Let me just open my VimRC, I suppose, and double check all of this plugins. Let's get this off on the right foot. So
I'm using 8.2.
In Vim, it's Vim plug. And so basically in your VimRC, you just put in there plug is the keyword space, and then in quotes the name of the plugin you want. So it's all configuration file based. Now, obviously VS Code, you have the global command palette. In Sublime Text, you've got the command palette. In Phpstorm, you've got the plugin directory and the plugin manager and things like that. So they all have this ecosystem. There's some way of doing it. Now, obviously, Vim being a text editor,
right.
Vim wants you to edit this thing inside of a text file. So you go and find the thing that you need on GitHub. In most scenarios, you just provide the namespace or the organization name and the project name, and that's enough to get it installed. And then those different plugins will provide their own documentation for around how you configure it. So in this scenario, I just put in plug, and then where is it? COC neoclide /
No, in this case, do you say
COC.nvim.
Vim and then plug, or how is it that you're doing it?
So literally, it's just inside of the VimRC. So you can put it in the VimRC file, and typically you would start everything in the VimRC file, and then as you add more things, you would start extracting files. So I've got a plugins directory. I've got a plugins.vim, and then all of the individual plugin configuration I put in like plugin/plugin name.vim, and then they can all just load each other.
Gotcha.
So you just reference it, list it. So it's a include.
Cool. Yep, that
type
makes
syntax.
Sense.
If you're using nvim, I believe they have an init.vim, which will read these things for you and handle it automatically. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, so we've got Vim plug now, which is built into Vim itself. And that allows you to handle all of that plugin stuff directly. It's really quick. It does things in parallel. So it'll, suck down all your packages at the same time. So you don't have to wait. The older Vundle and Pathogen and things like that used to do it one by one, and so it took a little bit of doing. But now it all just happens really quickly. And so we configure that. We tell it to use Conqueror of Completion, and then we configure Conqueror of Completion to use IntelliFence. And whether you install that as a npm dependency of your project, which you probably wouldn't. You wouldn't have a dev dependency for IntelliFence. You'd install it globally on your machine. And you just point it at that, and from there, everything just works, and you start getting all of the completions and the type of heads, and you get the pop-up menus that give you all of this extra stuff, and then you configure your key bindings to specific things. So I've got a key binding for go to definition. So I could put my cursor over a method name, hit my key binding for go to definition, and it'll take me to that file. So, if I've got a controller that's referencing a method on a model, I could hit my thing and it'll take me straight into that file. And then you can jump backwards and forwards between files really easily. There's tools that give you access to refactorings and renaming methods and variables and things like that. And it's smart enough to be able to either rename those variables in the local scope. So if you've got a $I in a for each and you want to change it to $record or $row, like it knows, it's smart enough to only rename the variable within the scope of that loop. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I suppose circling back to your point around hashtag dispel the myth, my intention is not to change anyone's mind directly. Don't think that I'm trying to say don't use Phpstorm or don't use VS Code or don't use Sublime Text. Like whatever works for you, that's fine. I know that there's a contingent of people that use Vim. There's every time I put a screenshot out of Vim or mention something about Vim, there's always a whole bunch of people that are like, I'm interested in this. What are you using? How are you doing this? I had one person tweet during the week that my Vim setup was more comprehensive than what they've got set up in their Phpstorm environment. And that's not a knock on Phpstorm. As with any of this stuff, it takes some degree of configuration. VS Code out of the box doesn't.
It's horrible.
yeah, VS Code out of the box doesn't do all this stuff. Caleb Porzio has an entire course around configuring
Exactly.
VS Code. So I think really the only thing VS Code has right now in 2021 over Vim for PHP development is the fact that you have a GUI to install your plugins. To configure those plugins, you still have to open the text file and still have to go and change things around. You still have to configure key bindings that make sense for you. I know that Caleb has a whole bunch
you
of
have a GUI
opinions.
to do it, right?
Correct.
You have a GUI to make that happen too.
Yeah. And I know
Yeah.
Caleb has a whole bunch of opinions around, he's got like Command KB and Command K, whatever, to do all those things. For a lot of Vimmers, you would use like the leader key, which is the thing that basically tells Vim, hey, what is about to follow is a key map. So I've got mine set up as comma. Some people have it set up as space. It comes down to personal preference and what's easier for you to hit on the keyboard. This configuration has to happen. Phpstorm, same thing. You have to configure your key maps. Phpstorm, obviously, because it is built specifically for PHP, it does a lot more stuff out of the box. But at the same time, there's a lot of visual noise in Phpstorm. Things that get in the way, things that you can't turn off. I don't know if you still can't, but it always had the browser icons in the top corner, and they were just there forever. I don't know if that's changed now.
I'm pretty sure you can take those out. Yeah.
Okay, so you can. But for a long time, they were just there and there was nothing you could do about it. But there's a lot of things that you need to do to pare down your editor. In VS Code, a large chunk of that course of Caleb's is paring down the editor, removing the visual noise, getting rid of all of the extra stuff so that you can focus on writing code. Vim's the other way around. Vim is pared down by default, and you add to it exactly what you need to get to where you need to go. And so that's not to say that Vim itself is necessarily easy to work. And this is a great point that Jeffrey Way raised, was that you need to invest a lot of time to learn Vim. So don't mistake my fervor, my excitement for using Vim in a really powerful way for developing PHP and for JavaScript and for CSS and Tailwind, as Vim being easy to learn, because Vim takes a long time, and 15 years into my career as a professional developer, I'm still learning things about Vim all the time. I'm learning new ways of doing things. I've only just in the last sort of year or so learned about macros, where macros you can record a series of keystrokes and then replay that. So
what's an instance and when you would use that?
So I know that you would use Laravel Shift for this, but one place that I have used it quite frequently is upgrading a Laravel 7 application to a Laravel 8 application, which takes the string-based route definitions and converts that to class-based route definitions and using tuple notation. So I could record a macro where I would place my cursor in the right place. I would remove the enclosing quotes. I would put : class after the controller. I would import that controller. I would replace the @ symbol, put the method name, whether it's index or show or edit or update, in quotes, and then I would wrap that whole thing inside square brackets as an array to get that tuple notation, and I would record that. And that way I could
place you might use that. Yeah, go ahead.
And then so I just go to the next route definition and I hit @W. So if I've recorded that to the W register, I could go @W and it'll replay that. And I go to the next one and then I just go @. And @ will replay the previously used macro. And I just do that all the way through the file. There are some variations. There might be an invocable. So I would record a different macro for that. And then the next time I hit that invocable controller, I would replay that macro. So you can have, as many different macros registered as you want. Typically for a route file, I'd have 2 or 3. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, Laravel Shift is the quickest way of doing this, especially if you've got a large enough routes file. And I think JMac said recently that that shift will be available in the next release. So it'll be, at the moment, it's a separate linter that you can run. In July, I think he said that would launch. It would just become part of the Laravel Shift. that it will convert your route file to that class-based notation. So that's really cool. And that's something that I won't need to do from then on. But, these macros are really useful all the time. If I'm copying and pasting stuff out of Tailwind UI into one of my projects, well, we have all of our stuff prefixed with TW dash. So it makes it really easy for me to like go to the start of the line, find class equals quote, insert TW dash, and that handles the first case. And then my next macro that I register is go to the start of the next class, go to insert mode, type TW dash, and then exit insert mode. And then I repeat that until I get to a screen-based one or a focus or an active, where I actually need to move the cursor to the colon and do the same thing. So I register 3 or 4 different macros there when I'm copying and pasting in Tailwind UI stuff into one of our work projects. And then I can just zip through and then replay all of the things that I need to in order to then update that. And that's a lot quicker than doing it in other ways. Sublime obviously has multi cursors, and you can do that. Doesn't quite handle it as well in those pseudo selector places because the prefix needs to go after the colon, so you've still got to separate that kind of stuff out. But
yeah, so like, does Vim have multi-cursor support?
It does. I can tell you, I have never ever used it.
Interesting. Do you ever use multi-cursor support like in Sublime?
Yeah, if I need something, like if I know that I'm going to need something that needs multi-cursor, if I'm manipulating a JSON document or a CSV or something, I will open it in Sublime Text. I'm going to use.
That's what I always do too.
I'm going to use the right tool for the job, but for me, 99% of the time, Vim is the right tool for the job, and it's because I'm quicker with it than I am with anything else. And I said this on Twitter. I have used Phpstorm. I learned in Vim. The first editor I ever used was Vim. It was a remote dev server. There was no option. Like there was no Phpstorm. We had IntelliJ and NetBeans and things like that available, but 99% of the time was Vim on a remote dev server. And then I got a Mac, and then I used Coda for a while. And then, Sublime Text. And then I went to Phpstorm, and I used Phpstorm for a couple of years. And then I came back to Sublime Text, and eventually I landed back in Vim. And I've been on Vim since 2017 as my primary editor. So, 4 years.
I kind of remember that. I think I remember that. When you decided to make that jump back and like kind of go hardcore at it and just stick in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I spend a lot of time in the terminal. I have an ultra-wide monitor, and I have a 70-30 split that's terminal and browser. And if I'm working in the browser, if I'm not, then it's just a full-screen terminal. And I'm using Tmux, so I've got Vim in a pane. I've got, Vim will send test output to a pane. I've got keyboard shortcuts set up so that I can call artisan make commands, so I can do all that kind of stuff from Vim. I've got a text-based Git client, so I can do all my Git stuff within Tmux as well. So 99% of the time, I don't even leave the terminal. And it's definitely a choice. And people that are using VS Code, they configure it to open a terminal in VS Code. People that are using Phpstorm open a terminal to. People using Phpstorm configure it to open a terminal inside Phpstorm. I think it's a really powerful way of doing things, is having a terminal available where you are doing your code. I get that some people prefer
I used to
the GUI.
I used to open a separate one, and it was just like, since I've started doing it inside of Phpstorm, it makes a world of difference. Yeah. And being able to do like run tests straight from within my editor. So like if I press Command or it's Control Shift R, I think run the current test under the cursor, right? Yeah. Or like get out into the main test file and just Control Shift R and it runs the entire thing, and then all runs directly within the code editor. Those are really powerful things to not have to switch out of that context. You just stay right there, and it's like Command 0 to open terminal, right? Command 9 to open Git. Command I don't remember what the tests one is, but anyway, just be able to stick right in there. And so like exactly what you're talking about, right? Like It's the same thing. It's just that it's like I just have them listed along the bottom of my editor.
Monitor.
Like there's
Oh yeah.
Tinkerwell, Terminal, Git,
Mm-hmm.
To Do, Problems, Favorites, NPM, Gulp. I never use those. Some of these are on here that I never ever use.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like even in Phpstorm, over a period of time, you're going to set up a whole bunch of stuff that you forget about, that you don't use anymore. You know, you're not using Gulp anymore, but that's still configured in there.
Right.
The same
Yep.
things that happen in Storm and Sublime and VS Code happen in Vim. And over a period of time, you go through and you clean stuff and you get rid of stuff. I was trying to find something the other day because I had two things that were doing the git gutter, like putting the symbols for changed lines in my line number column. And I figured out what one of them was, but I couldn't find the other one. So you know, you get in these scenarios every now and then where you've got a plugin and you're not quite sure what's doing it over time. So, you know, just keeping the tool sharp, keeping the workspace clean is what I like to think of in terms of Vim. And you know, we're all doing it. We're all trying to find the workflow that works best for us, and we're all trying to make it as seamless as possible. You know, David Hempel and Adam Wathan, they built the Sublime PHP unit plugin so that they could run their tests from within Sublime. I'm pretty sure with the release of Sublime version 4, they've got a terminal built in now, so you can, you know, pop up a terminal window within Sublime text and run the tests in there. I know that they've upgraded their Python support so they can better support IntelliSense and the language server protocol, which VS Code is. VS Code is obviously going to have the best first-party support for that because Microsoft owns the LSP, they own the editor, they own TypeScript. So that integration is always going to be tightest within VS Code. But because it's open source, it gets ported to, you know, Storm and to Sublime now with their better support for LSP and to Vim. And so, you know, we're all striving for the workflow that works best for us. And, you know, someone said to me, what's the selling point for using Vim over Phpstorm? I said, well, it's the same as VS Code, you know. It's you still need to configure it, right? Unless you're using Phpstorm, you still need to configure a fair bit in some way or another to get it where you need it to be. Vim has the overhead of having to learn Vim, but I think, and I tweeted, Ben Orenstein talked about this on his Art of Product podcast recently, where he still feels that, to paraphrase him, I'll put a link in the show notes for the actual thing, but to paraphrase him, he still feels that as a professional code writer, that Vim is probably worth learning. It's certainly I certainly find it the most powerful tool for moving text around and doing things with text and writing things with text. And you don't get any of that visual noise by default. It's like, here is the code. And if you want to add the noise, you add the noise. I've got line numbers and I've got git gutters, and I've got now IntelliSense does the whole, like, you're using deprecated, you're using a deprecated method, or, you're using a method that doesn't exist. So all of that kind of stuff is there. But circling back to the
which
test,
is so nice.
Yeah. Circling back to because you get that feedback within the editor, and this is
exactly
Phpstorm
immediately.
does this. Yeah, I get the Phpstorm does this. I get the Phpstorm does all these things. That is not lost on me. Okay, people say that to me all the time. Whenever I mention, why don't you just use Phpstorm? I don't want to use Phpstorm, and I don't need you to want to use Vim. I'm talking to the people that know how to use Vim, that are using Vim, that have maybe left Vim like I did, and they're looking about coming back. I don't subscribe to the belief that Phpstorm makes you a worse developer or a better developer. I think the tools are there to enhance your workflow, and whether you're a good or bad developer is just whether you're a good or bad developer,
Yeah, that's true.
This is all about enhancing and streamlining and doing what works best for you.
If you're a good developer, if you're a good developer, you're going to make the tools that you work, right? Yeah. Right. I mean, that's true. Like, so
if Phpstorm was the one and only and the best tool for everyone, there wouldn't be this huge contingent of people using VS Code.
Yeah, I think some of it is too, like the paid versus non-paid thing. Right? VS Code is free, and And so I think you get a lot of people, you get a large chunk of people who are using, we all know how cheap developers are, don't we? I mean,
We
anything that we can get for free,
yeah,
that's
we
the
want to
thing
be
we're going to
we
gravitate
all
towards.
want to be paid six figures, but we don't want to spend $100 a year on the code editor that we are going to be using all
Correct.
day every day. Yeah.
Yeah, or like the font that's like you would think that somebody was over here. I don't know. I don't want to be gross, so I won't say what I was going to say. But like, people, there's a font that comes out that's specifically built for code editors, right?
Mm.
It's like $100, and people are like, "What? I would never
Mm-hmm.
spend that much money." It's like you do this every day, all day, though, right? I mean, you do realize that like this is built specifically for this purpose, and
Yep.
that's why they're charging for it. And that's ridiculous. I would never pay for that. And so I think that honestly is part of why VS Code has such a large contingent. I mean, I mean, so Sublime 4 just came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to buy a license, and
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So for me, like, I think some of the things that are really attractive about any of these editors and outside of like Vim is like Sublime was my first editor that wasn't like Notepad plus plus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Wilbur Power, he's in the chat and he was talking about he was talking about Notepad plus plus.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, Notepad plus plus, that's the stuff, right? And so Notepad plus plus was like editor I used for a long time. And then I used Sublime, and I felt like when I was first learning it, it was like, okay, like this is a completely different sort of thing. I was learning like the multi-cursor stuff was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Able to be able to select something in Command D, whatever, and get down through all the different variables, and then be able to rename them all at once, or being able to select through a list and change the names of all the classes at one time. All that stuff, right? Those things were all super, super powerful. And so whenever I've gone from Sublime to anything, the first thing I do is always like import all the keyboard shortcuts, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, like Sublime style, right? It seems like every editor has that sort of,
Yeah.
you're comfortable using those shortcuts here, do this.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got all your Sublime shortcuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really there's only a few, but I feel like multi-cursor support is one of those things that I've leaned on as a crutch for like a long time. And maybe less now that I'm using Phpstorm because I just use like the refactor commands. So I'll just highlight a variable, Command T, and then rename, and then go through it like that, right? Which is, again, Vim has similar functionality now, right? So you don't really need multi-cursor support all that often. Or if I do, I'll pop stuff open in Sublime. Right? I don't use it. I don't do it in Phpstorm super often.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't know. I like Vim. I use it on a regular basis, probably almost daily. But I don't have all the fancy plugin stuff, right? I just have like basic highlighting, syntax highlighting sort of things. Because again, it's like use the right tool for the job sort of deal. So whenever I'm on a server and I need to browse around, I know how to use Vim. I know enough how to be dangerous, but I'm not doing any like heavy editing in it. It's more like I'm poking around and stuff and making small changes if I need to, or more likely just exploring kind of a currently running app in production, just looking around at stuff and be like, okay, is that correct? Is that how it's supposed to look? Or what might be going on here? Throw a log statement in somewhere if I need to look at a process that's having a problem.
A chunk of code.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I've not done that yet. It's because it doesn't auto save. At least mine doesn't. Like I've not got set up to auto save, so I can always undo real quick. And, oops, that didn't look right. Undo that. So yeah, it's I like using Vim. It's just not a daily driver for me.
Yeah.
So, but like if you're, I would say like if you're one of those people who doesn't know anything, like who's literally afraid to use Vim, that's not good. That's probably not a good thing.
Correct.
Like,
and this
you
is not for
should
you. And I'm not trying
at
to
least
convince you that you should learn Vim, but I am saying that if you do invest the time in it, it is a very powerful tool. I'm always slightly amused by the people that say just use Phpstorm with the Vim plugin or just use VS Code with the Vim plugin. And what that tells me is that you don't know Vim quite as well as other people, because those things work for the basic movements. Using HJKL for moving around and like selecting lines and things like that. But to someone that knows the Vim motions quite well, it's not the same. there are so many things that are missing, and decisions that were made in Vim and things that have been in Vim for 20 years that just make sense now, 20 years later. Like how many tools can you say, programming tools can you say have been around for 20 years? Emacs maybe, but the decisions they made 20 years ago are still relevant now. That. So that's always something like, and then trying to slap a plugin together that emulates Vim. Well, that's what it is. It's an emulator, and it's not meant to, and I don't expect it to have one-to-one feature parity with what Vim does. But once you get beyond that basic functionality and you try and use a Vim emulator, it's just not the same thing. So, and I tell you what, so that always amuses me, because those people obviously they just don't know, they don't know what they don't know, and that's fine. A lot of the time we don't know as developers what we don't know. The one that gets me every time is the how do you exit Vim? Like that joke is so old, and it's look, really, please, if that's all you have to say to me about Vim, just don't, because it doesn't work. It's literally
it's a well-meaning joke, right? It's just somebody that doesn't have anything else to say. It's a meme. It's a meme, right? It's
the thing is, when you open
it's like somebody
Vim,
replying to a Yaz. It's like somebody replying to a Yaz tweet with
like a serious response.
Drake with a Drake, like a Drake gif, right? It's just like it's a jab, right? It's just being silly. So. Well, anyway, so I'm interested to see kind of what you come up with in this, and I probably will not dump a bunch of time into getting Vim set up, but it is interesting enough that I would probably spend a little bit of time learning about some different pieces. It's one of those things. It's good to know a little bit about. You can get a good amount of information with a minimal amount of investment. It's sort of like one of those things where you can get like 50 to 60% of what you need, like, to know within a couple hours, and then the other 40% is what takes you forever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You can go through like the Vim playground and all of that. The Vim tutorial, Vim tutor. Like if you open up Vim and you type :Vim tutor, I'm pretty sure. My keyboard stopped working, so I won't do that. But if you do that, and that takes you through learning the initial things. There is a project that I will link to in the show notes called it's vim.so, which is like an online learning platform that looks really good, that teaches you how to use Vim. So definitely check that out. Again,
vim.so.
Yeah, I would tell you. Actually, can you look it up, because my keyboard's stopped working?
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. I feel like I've seen this.
It's been around for a little while.
Yeah, I've been here.
Kevin or Steve, something like that. I'm sorry.
I'm going to try this out. Again. I feel like I have seen it, but it's been a while since I've done this.
But you will definitely learn the basics very quickly in terms of even if you don't use HJKL to move around, if you're still using the arrows, that's cool. HJKL, it just keeps all your hands in one place. Like you don't have to reach over and all of that stuff. So, but being able to delete multiple lines with a couple of keystrokes, being able to select a couple of lines, move them around your document without, yes, the mouse is there, but the mouse is like all the way over there. Even people that are using Sublime Text, Adam is always talking about, the keyboard shortcuts that he's using, so he doesn't have to use the mouse. People want, when they're coding, to keep their hands in the one place and just type, and so Vim really embraces that to the nth degree. So one thing that I resisted for a long time, because I thought would be visually distracting, and then once I gave it a go, it was not as distracting as I thought it was, is using relative line numbers. So in your number column on the where you've got line numbers, normally it's listed 1 through 99. With relative line numbers, it's the line. So if you're on line 50, it'll show that you're on line 50, but then it will count upwards from 1 in both directions. And this makes it very easy if you wanted to visually select a block or a number of lines. You want to go up to the next paragraph or up to the next if statement or whatever. You could hit Shift V, 5K, and that would just, you could eyeball how many lines you need to go up or down and then just do it that way. And that, once I really started to get into the Vim motions and moving up and down the file, that made things a lot simpler. There's shortcuts. There's, you can select in paragraphs, around paragraphs, which means, include the paragraphs. You could select inside a div, change inside a div, select the div, delete the div, delete inside the div, all of this kind of stuff that you can do with just a couple of keystrokes where you would otherwise be fumbling around with the mouse. I know that VS Code VS Code and Sublime have got key bindings to do that kind of stuff. I'm sure Phpstorm has as well. It's just being able to do all this stuff. And over time, you learn it. But once you learn the motions, you can learn about chaining the motions together to do different things. And that's where Vim gets really powerful as a tool for moving code around. And that's the bit that I think takes a long time. Configuring, especially now, install COC, install IntelliFence, pick a theme. That's really the only configuration you need to do to get, and even the theme is optional. Install COC, install IntelliFence. That's all you really need to do in order to have a really solid piece of tooling. Pay the $18 to get the IntelliFence license for all of your machines, for all of the updates that they ever make. And you get the extra refactoring, renaming, all of that kind of stuff. $18 is a steal for every single update ever, considering you're paying, $100 a year for Phpstorm. Obviously, IntelliSense will still work without that, but you only get like the type definitions and things like that, click through files, import use statements, things like that, which is the same whether you're doing it in VS Code or Vim. So
interesting. So yeah, and then I guess like with Phpstorm, it's like you said, you pay $100 a year for it, but then you get that, like, you don't have to use IntelliFence because they use their own stuff.
Correct. And they
Right.
they
one
built
thing
the
I
thing
do use.
specifically
One
for
thing I do
PHP
use. What's that now?
Obviously, Phpstorm is going to have all this stuff built in for that price tag because that's specifically what it's built for. So
yeah, one thing I do use. It's like a paid thing in Phpstorm is that Laravel. What is it called?
idea.
Yeah, that's it. Laravel idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty handy. I like that one. It's worth a couple bucks I pay for it a month.
So I discovered recently that Laravel Id Helper, the project from Barry van der Heuvel, that's actually that's an editor agnostic format. So it's not specific to Phpstorm or Sublime or VS.
Correct.
So I've installed that in my project template and in some projects that I'm working on now. And as long as you remember, this is the important thing, you have to remember to regenerate the IDE helper and the models helper. Whenever you create a new model, whenever you add new methods, like to periodically regenerate that file. And you'll get all of that completion. Like it'll give you property completion. So the IDE helper, when you do PHP Artisan IDE-helper:models, it will actually connect to your database and look at all of the tables and look at all of the fields and all of their type definitions. And then it will write the doc blocks into the underscore, either into the header of your models, into the page level doc block, or into a underscore IDE_helper underscore models.php file. And then your editor, Storm, Sublime, VS Code, Vim, they will read that file and they will give you the type declarations. And that's key for things like Laravel, because Laravel uses a lot of magic methods and property access and things like that to access those things. Phpstorm goes to an extra level where you can, I'm pretty sure you can click on a view. So if you've got view quote and then post.edit, you can click on that and that will take you through to the view. I don't think IDE Helper does that, but certainly, those kinds of things, like whether I'm clicking through that or I'm hitting the command palette and just typing like POED and enter. I don't, 6 one, half a dozen of the other there really, for me.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just whatever you're used to, whatever you decide to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay, so hey, we are probably hitting close to time here. We're at 48 minutes. So I was gonna say real quick before we kind of jump off, I do have, man, I have a couple sites I'm helping, this nonprofit I work with
Mm-hmm.
on occasion. They've got some old, crusty Laravel sites out there, like running like 5.4, Laravel 5.4.
Yep.
Crazy thing is, like, there was also another project. It was like running like 5.7. It was like in 2019 that this one was in particular was created, and now it's like we're getting ready to like hit like Laravel. I think we're like 8.5 right now, something
Mm-hmm.
like that, right? And so it's kind of crazy how fast the things change. Um, and so
Yeah.
it's a really good reminder to stay on top of, like, Laravel Shift is cheap if you stay up with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't stay up with it, it's like $30 per shift,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. If
So
you've
to
got
go
to do
from
it a few at a time.
5.5 to 5.6 is $30, to 5.7 is $30, to 5.8 is $30, to 6.0 is $30, to 6, you know what I mean? So it's the thing is, like, it's worth it. It's totally worth it.
Mm.
But at this point, I'm almost into their like human shift, where it makes sense,
Yeah.
And I've used their human services stuff before. I'm curious if the amount of time that they offer in each block is able to get through all the different shifts. Because if it's not, it's like I might just save money by trying to do it myself, but I don't want to do it myself. That's the
Yeah.
problem. I'm not
I,
sure if this nonprofit will bite on like a $500 price tag to
mm,
update something that's they're going to see basically no benefit from, other than,
correct.
hey, you're not going to be running on PHP 7.1
Mm.
anymore, or
Yeah.
something stupid. So
Yeah. I do it. I just budget it in any of the stuff that I'm doing, because these client apps that I've talked about before that I touch once a year, you usually get 2 or 3 version bumps, and I just budget in the fact that I'm going to Laravel shift them. And when I went to from 6 to 7, I like baselined a whole bunch of stuff, took out a whole bunch of weird stuff that was just not right. I spent a bit of time then in the, knowing that in the future I would have to be still maintaining this app. And so now my Laravel shifts take like 20 minutes, because it's run it, check the nodes, see if there's anything that was missed, and go
exactly,
there.
yeah,
Especially now that it does better config merging of the, because before it used to just baseline your config files, and then you'd have to go and figure out what changed and add your old stuff back and things like that. So now it will do a much better job of merging your changes with the defaults. So I don't even really have to go through that kind of stuff anymore, and it's just such a seamless process to shift and to get things updated, that I I would do it even if I was paying for it out of my own pocket for client work,
yeah,
just because it makes sense to try and get the application baselined as much as possible with what Laravel is at that time.
yeah. That's kind of where I'm at this point. Is it's like I don't want to pay for it out of my pocket to upgrade their stuff, but it's
Yeah,
like it's getting to the point where, like, all the libraries, like, you can't, like, you get into these weird situations again where it's like
you want to install
you
something and
can't
you
install the
can't,
library because the Laravel version is behind, or because the PHP version is behind, or
yeah,
whatever it might be.
or you can
So
install an older
it's
version
just
of the library that doesn't have the functionality that you need because it was added
yeah,
in
yeah,
a
it
new
just
version.
gets messy really quick, and then it's like, yeah, this is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
In either case, though, I have gotten much more familiar with deploying applications, or like building and deploying applications, because I've been helping them. I say applications, I mean like um, iOS and Android apps.
Right. Okay.
So,
Mm-hmm.
which has been interesting.
We should talk about that next
It's
time.
it was it used to be. What's that now?
We should talk about that next episode. Talking
Yeah,
about
let's do that. It's
mobile
been
apps.
really. It is very. Very interesting, and it's cool too. Like, um, it's not too bad. It's not too bad anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's very approachable. There's so many options for how to build this stuff out anymore. It's so many options.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we should talk about that next show.
Nice.
So why don't we wrap it up there? And
Let's do
maybe,
it.
I mean, we have a couple things. Next show we want to talk to Yaz probably.
Yeah.
So we'll have Yaz on. So be sure to tune in next time to hear Yaz. And then maybe the time after that we can talk about deploying applications, like not web applications, but phone applications. Yeah, that'd be
Mm-hmm.
a good one.
Beauty.
Okay, dokie. What episode were we on again?
97.
97. Thanks everybody for checking in with us. We appreciate it. Feel free to check out show notes for this episode at northmeetsouth.audio/97. Of course, you can always find us on Twitter at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at North South Audio. And actually, I said the name of the website wrong. I think it's northmeetsouth.audio/97. And of course, should write us up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be amazing. We appreciate it all. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you.